Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into an emotional journey through a misty forest where hope and mystery collide. We'll follow Dee and Adam as they chase a fleeting figure in the rain and discover unexpected truths in a hidden shelter. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on the upcoming videos. Let's get started. Dusk was falling fast, the sky fading into a muted wash of gray. A thin veil of mist draped itself over the forest, and then came the drizzle. Soft at first, barely a whisper, until tiny droplets began to gather on Dee and Adam's shoulders. They followed the narrow path beside the stream, the ground beneath them slick with mud. The gentle burble of water mingled with the rain, an almost calming rhythm, until Dee suddenly froze. His eyes locked across the stream. Through the hazy curtain of rain, a figure emerged. The silhouette, the subtle sway in her walk, the gentle curve of her hair. It was too familiar to mistake. A shock of recognition shot through him, stealing his breath. Huyen. The name slipped from his lips in barely more than a whisper, but it carried a tremor that was impossible to hide. Before Adam could react, Day was already moving. The woman turned sharply at the sound of his voice, surprise flashing in her eyes before she bolted. Huyen, wait! Day's call cut through the falling rain. Adam shouted after him, but Dee's mind was already gone, fixed on the sight of her. He crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at his face, the crunch of wet leaves sharp beneath his boots. His chest pounded, not only from the sprint, but from the gnawing question twisting in his gut. Was this hope or dread driving him? The rain thickened, drops pelting his skin, blurring the world ahead. The path writhed through the trees like a slick ribbon, twisting and dipping dangerously. Still, he ran. Please, don't run from me anymore. His voice cracked, swallowed almost instantly by the roar of the downpour. But the figure ahead didn't slow. Her outline grew smaller, dissolving into the milky haze until it vanished entirely. Dee stopped abruptly, breath sawing in and out of his lungs. Rain and sweat streamed down his face in cold, stinging trails. The hollow ache in his chest grew heavier with each gasp. Why are you running from me? The thought echoed in his mind, unanswered except for the relentless patter of rain. Cold, merciless, unyielding. The rain eased, but the forest was already sinking into darkness. Adam eventually found him standing motionless under a tree, staring into the shadows where the woman had disappeared. No luck? Adam's voice was low. Dee shook his head, still catching his breath. They made their way back to a small shelter nearby. Inside, an oil lamp spilled a fragile circle of gold across the damp wooden walls. Outside, the rain's steady drumming on the thatched roof replayed the scene in a haunting rhythm. Day sank down beside the door, back pressed to the wall, hands clenched tightly as though trying to keep something from slipping away entirely. Adam poured him a cup of hot tea. The steam curled upward, brushing his face, but the warmth never touched the chill in his chest. You're certain it was her? Adam asked, his tone direct but not unkind. Dee hesitated, eyes fixed on the steaming cup, before replying quietly, I know it was her. The memory of her head turning, even for that brief moment, was burned into him, too vivid, too sharp to be a mistake. Outside, the wind sighed through the treetops. scent of damp soil and rotting leaves. Dee's gaze drifted to the dark beyond the doorway, questions swirling with no answers. Adam placed a hand on his shoulder, a small gesture, but heavy with meaning. Both of them knew that tomorrow they would search again, and whatever truth they found, they would face it. Night deepened. The rain returned, heavier this time, pelting their skin with icy drops. Dee and Adam followed a local man who had offered to guide them, their boots sliding on the narrow, treacherous trail. The forest groaned and whispered under the storm, the nearby stream roaring like a restless animal. They stopped at the edge of the forest, where a rocky overhang jutted out above a patch of muddy ground. In the dim glow of an oil lamp, a young woman lay curled on her side, soaked through, her breathing shallow and labored. Dee froze. She was wearing clothes identical to Huyen's. He dropped to his knees beside her, his voice soft and urgent. Huyen. The light shifted over her face, and hope shattered. It wasn't her. She's burning with fever, Adam said quickly. We can't leave her here. Dee nodded, slipping his arms beneath her fragile frame. Her skin was scorching to the touch, her body limp. Wind tore at the trees above, and the rain thickened into a white sheet that erased the trail ahead. Bring her to my place, Adam ordered, already turning toward the path. Day said nothing, just held her tighter as they moved through the storm. In his mind, the image of that fleeing figure still replayed, too vivid to dismiss. Tonight was a pause, but tomorrow the search would begin again. Morning crept in quietly, thin light spilling through the small window and scattering pale patterns across the wooden floor. Tuvi's eyes fluttered open, her first sensation a dizzy wave that made the room tilt around her. A man stood a short distance away, Dee, watching her intently. His voice was low, calm, as he asked if she was feeling better. Her thoughts were still tangled from the moment she'd collapsed the night before. She looked around the small room, plain, unadorned, the faint scent of aged wood mingling with the damp breath of morning. There was a strange mix of safety and unease here, as though she was both sheltered and cornered at the same time. Dee kept a respectful distance, but something in his gaze made her pulse quicken. It wasn't threatening. If anything, it carried a quiet knowing, as though he understood more than he was letting on. The silence between them stretched, filled only by her quickened heartbeat and his steady, measured breaths. She realized she was in a place she didn't recognize, alone with a man she didn't fully understand. The sound of footsteps on the porch broke the stillness. The door swung open, and Adam stepped in with Dee following behind. Tuvi stiffened slightly, her eyes flicking between the two men. Adam greeted her with an easy smile and a polite nod. Dee offered his own greeting, his voice soft, but edged with something that felt strangely familiar. The tension in the room eased a fraction, though a fine thread of silence still wove through the air, as if all of them were waiting for the other to speak first. Adam's gaze lingered on Tuvi, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. Dee shifted subtly to the side, creating space for whatever conversation might come next. There was something in the way they acknowledged each other. Small nods, brief glances, that hinted they might have crossed paths before, or at least heard of one another. From outside, a gentle breeze slipped through the doorway, carrying with it the rich, damp scent of earth after a the three of them stood at the threshold of something none of them could yet name. A shared story was waiting to unfold, its first threads already binding them together, whether they realized it or not. The late afternoon sun cast a warm golden glow over the path leading to Huyen's house. The light spilled across a faded thatched roof, almost like a memory frozen in amber. Dee walked beside Adam and Tuvi, their footsteps quiet, but their hearts pounding with anticipation. Every beat echoed the mix of hope and uncertainty that as they reached the wooden door, it creaked open slowly, and Maya appeared. Her wide, bright eyes sparkled like a small flame flickering in the dimness. She let out a soft cheer and ran toward Dee. Kneeling down, Dee gave her a carefully wrapped gift, then poured milk into an old ceramic cup. The gentle sound of Maya sipping the milk filled the room, but in Dee's mind, it stirred a flood of old memories. Adam stayed back, his deep, warm voice striking up a gentle conversation with Maya. Their words wove seamlessly into the quiet evening, blending with the soft sounds. Day and Tuvi stepped further inside. The air carried a strange mix of the familiar and the unknown, a faint scent of wood smoke and the subtle rustling of wind through bamboo walls, like whispers from another time. Tuvi walked close beside Day, her eyes scanning every detail. They didn't speak. When Dee and Huyen finally stood face to face, time seemed to pause. A soft, warm light spilled through the doorway, casting a golden hue on their faces. But in their eyes swirled a silent storm, years apart, memories unspoken, and emotions left unheeded. They stepped forward together, their arms wrapping tightly around one another. Their breaths mingled, slow and unsteady, as if trying to murmur. No words were spoken at first. The trembling in their embrace told stories of longing, waiting, and old wounds that had never full. Finally, Dee broke the silence with a low, steady voice. He spoke of the reasons that had forced him to leave back then, each word heavy with regret and quiet sorrow. There was no evasion or disguise, only honesty and a deep desire to Huyen listened, her eyes shimmering with tears that held both pain and hope. Every word seemed to unlock a drawer in her memory, a drawer she had tried to keep shut for so long.
Khi hoàng hôn buông xuống,
Day
Đệ
and
và
Adam
Adam
navigate a
vượt qua
misty
khu rừng
forest
sương mờ
under a soft
dưới
drizzle,
cơn phùn mưa nhẹ,
chasing a
đuổi theo một
mysterious
bóng
figure
dáng bí ẩn
who
trong
looks
đống
like
thuyền.
Huyen.
Dù họ tuyệt vọng
Despite their
đuổi theo
desperate
qua cơn
pursuit
mưa
through
bùn
rain
lầy,
and mud, she
cô ấy biến mất
vanishes
vào
into
trong
the
bóng tối,
shadows,
để lại trong
leaving
Đệ
Day
một
with
nỗi
a
đau
haunting
đan xen
ache of
lẫn
hope
hy
and
vọng
doubt.
và nghi ngờ.
Later,
Sau đó họ
they
tìm thấy
find a
cô,
young
một
woman
cô gái
sick
trẻ
and
ốm yếu
unconscious
và
by
bất
the
tỉnh bên
forest's edge,
rìa rừng.
but she is
Nhưng
not
cô ấy không phải
Huyen.
Huyền. Mọi
They
người
bring
đưa
her to
cô ấy đến
safety,
nơi an toàn,
while
trong
Dee's
khi
mind
tâm
lingers
trí Đệ vẫn
on a
ám ảnh
fleeting
bởi
glimpse of the
hình
woman
ảnh
he
thoáng
thought was
qua và người
Huyen.
phụ nữ mà anh
The
nghĩ là
next
Huyền.
morning, Tuvi
Sáng hôm
awakens in
sau,
an unfamiliar
Tử Vi
room,
tỉnh dậy trong một căn
uneasy
phòng xa
yet
lạ và
intrigued
cảm
by
thấy bất
Day's
an,
calm presence.
nhưng bị cuốn hút bởi sự
When Adam
điềm tĩnh
arrives,
của Đệ.
a quiet tension
Trong khi
fills the
Adam xuất hiện,
space,
một bầu không khí
hinting at
căng thẳng
hidden
nặng nề bao trùm,
connections
gợi
and
lên
shared
những mối
pasts.
liên hệ tiềm ẩn và
Together,
quá khứ chung.
they stand on
Cùng
the
nhau,
edge of a
họ đứng trước
story
ngưỡng của một
filled
câu
with
chuyện đầy những
unanswered
câu hỏi chưa lời
questions,
giải đáp,
hope,
hy vọng
and the
và lời
promise
hứa.
of discovery.